Hi everyone. Today we will be talking about the social characteristics of the colonial period. We will also be talking about the religious characteristics of the colonial period. And just as a reminder, there's three different regions that we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about the New England region. We'll be talking about the middle colonies and the southern colonies. And just a reminder, when I say colonies, I'm referring to multiple. When I say a single colony, it's just one. So Virginia is a colony. Maryland is a colony. New York is a colony. The colonies, which is more than one, are the southern colonies, the middle colonies, and the New England colonies. And we'll be starting off talking about New England. New England's colonial society was based on religious standing, so it had to do with religion, and that was mainly Puritans. Puritans, it's a type of Christianity. Puritans were discriminated against in England. In England, you had to belong to the Church of England. If you were a different sect of Christianity, they didn't like you. You had to be Puritan. So, however, Puritans themselves, once they got to New England, they grew increasingly intolerant of dissenters who challenged their belief in the connection between religion and government. Dissenters are people who did not agree with them, and they were intolerant of dissenters. And Rhode Island was founded by dissenters fleeing persecutions by Puritans in Massachusetts. So there was a bunch of people in Massachusetts who did not agree with the Puritans. They thought that their beliefs weren't correct, and because the Puritans were intolerant, all the people, the dissenters, they fled to Rhode Island. Next, we talk about the middle colonies. They were home to multiple religious groups who generally believed in religious tolerance. So some examples, the colony of Pennsylvania had Quakers. Colony of New York had Huguenots and Jews, and New Jersey had Presbyterians. Presbyterians, Quakers, those are both sects of Christianity. The Huguenots, that's also a form of Christianity. Jews, Judaism, that's not a form of Christianity. But all of these religions, they were tolerant. So you can have, if someone was Puritan came by, or if there was Jews in New Jersey or Quakers in New York, they didn't care. You could be a different religion, and they were fine with it. Sort of like the United States. We have lots of religions, and we are tolerant. That's why they had tolerance. And the middle colonies had flexible social structures and began to develop a middle class of skilled artisans. Artisans are people who make or fix things. So think if you're a carpenter, or if you make sculptors, if you work with metal, you would be a artisan. They also had entrepreneurs. Those are people who own a business. You own a business, you're an entrepreneur, and they had small farmers. And the big thing is the middle class. Middle class means you're not rich, but you're not poor. But middle class, life is pretty good if you're in middle class. You don't have to worry about food. Maybe you don't have a mansion, or you don't have a really nice car, you don't have really nice things, but you're getting by. You're fine. Your family has food, you have a house, you can buy some nice things. That's what middle class is. It's just kind of in the middle. Not rich, not poor, but in the middle. And that's what the middle colonies had. They had a lot of people in the middle class, which is good. So now we're going to be talking about Virginia and other southern colonies. So you have to remember, Virginia is a southern colony, and they had a social structure based on family status and the ownership of land. So if you owned a lot of land, you were pretty important. If you came from a family that was very well known, you were pretty important. And large landowners in the eastern lowlands dominated colonial government and society. So once again, remember, these were the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers received a lot of money, or not a lot of money, sorry, Cavaliers received a lot of land, and they built plantations, they grew tobacco, and they made even more money. So the large landowners were the ones who controlled the government. And unlike the other colonies, The southern colonies maintained an allegiance or friendship to the Church of England and closer social ties to Britain than did those in other colonies. As a reminder, Britain and England are the same thing. It's just different name, but it's the same place. And the southern colonies, they continued following the Church of England. That's the religion they believed in. So some social characteristics, just real briefly, you do have to know that in the mountains and valleys in Virginia, like the South, society was characterized by small subsistence farmers, hunters and traders of Scots, Irish, German, English descent. Remember, the people that were indentured servants, after they worked 4 to 7 years, they were free. They can go start their own farms. So a lot of them went to the mountains and valleys of Virginia, and they weren't wealthy, but they had small farms. They hunted for their food. They traded some stuff, and they were mostly from Scotland, Ireland, Germany, or from England. And pretty soon, Maryland was established, and it was the intent of being a haven, which means safe place for Catholics. That's a place where Catholics can go and not be persecuted. And some of the social characteristics of the colonies, while the cultural foundations in North American colonies were British, American Indians and African cultures influenced every aspect of colonial society. And I'm going to switch this, because if you remember, you might see the term Indian, but generally they're called Native Americans, and they're called Indians because Columbus thought he was in India, but he wasn't. So Native Americans and African culture, they still had a lot of influence on society during colonial times. So now, just real quick, something about religion in the colonies. There's something called the Great Awakening, and the Great Awakening is a religious movement that swept through Europe and the colonies during the mid to 1700s. And all this means is during this time there was a lot of people who really weren't that religious, but all of a sudden they had an awakening. That means a lot of people started doing something. So this led to a rapid growth of evangelical, which means Christian, denominations such as Methodist and Baptist. So a lot of people started returning to Christianity. They started becoming Christian again. And the Great Awakening also challenged the established religious and governmental orders and laid one social foundation for the American Revolution. And just real quick, religion in the colonies, some of the big things to remember: New England had Puritans. The middle colonies had Anglicans and Catholics. These are both Christianity, but they're different types of Christians. And you have to remember, in England during this time, you weren't allowed to be Anglican or Catholic. You weren't allowed to be Puritan. You weren't allowed to be Quaker. England was very strict. And another thing is Quakers in Pennsylvania, which Pennsylvania is a middle colony, was tolerant of other religions. So, yeah. And that's it for today. If you have any questions, let me know. And I have a really quick joke for you guys. So, why don't they play poker in the jungle? Because there's too many cheetahs. Get it? Ha ha ha. That's it. Bye.